Welcome back, fellow fans of the written word. And here at my shmaybe setting, we have completed another Wheel of Time book. This time it was The Shadow Rising. So let's break down why I like this book a lot. In a nutshell, this book is, well, Rand is back into the spotlight as opposed to the last book, and this time with Matt on his side. He was navigating politics, different cultural expectations, and just coming to terms with his heritage. What I expected was, considering the ending of the last book, I expected a whole lot of governance and Rand learning and studying how to be a leader and a ruler as well. I also expected for Matt to go on and venture forth on his own, to have swashbuckling adventures. But instead, what I got was, yes, some governance and learning how to rule in the beginning, along with the advice he received and followed from the daughter heir Elaine. That was certainly a thing in the first part. However, the meat of the book was Aiel, his Aiel heritage, clashing of cultures, cloak and dagger world in which Elaine and Nynaeve had to operate and found themselves in. Vastly different expectations versus reality, I have to say, but all the better for it. Some highlights include character interaction, and it's a common compliment I give to Robert Jordan's writing, but I think this time it really came together, especially the character development that came with the character interaction, especially when it comes to people from different cultures. We had Elaine's friendship with Avienda. Then we had Avienda's animosity of sorts towards Rand. Animosity that kind of went into the opposite direction towards the end, with her budding feelings towards him, I suppose. The biggest thing for me that I liked in this book is actually something that I wanted to discuss with you guys in the comment section. I don't know, well, they probably do, but regarding the just fandom at large, how big of a talking point is the fallout after the revelation that Rand truly is who he is, the fallout of the Aiel tribes leaving Rand, not all of them, but a lot of them. And I really like this, and this is my favorite thing about the book, is how realistic is it? Despite the generations of belief, custom, prophecies, a significant amount of them could not handle the change in the status quo. And they left. That strikes me as remarkably realistic. Magic may be real, the power, the source may be real, prophecies may come true, which they did, but people don't handle changes equally. And that's even reiterated through the book. To quote Ruark, "You bring change, Randolph Thor," and he's not the only one who voices this notion out loud. He certainly did bring a huge change. And One thing I want to ask also regarding the prophecy about the Aiel. So he brings salvation, but he also brings destruction, and I as a reader assume that there'll be some kind of major fallout, or a vast majority of them will be killed, either from the forces of the dark or some inner struggles. But turns out maybe it's a purely ideological defeat. Maybe the quarter of the Aiel that stood with Rand at the end of the book were the true Aiel, and the ones that left do not consider themselves as such. Maybe so, who knows? But it's a really meaty ending. I really like it. It's not... There was this huge climactic battle that turned out not to be killed a bad guy in the end, but how can I use this to my advantage? And let's not get rid of this Forsaken. Let's use him as a teacher, no matter what potential implications that might bring towards the future. And a small point I also like to add, I complained a lot on my last review about Fail, and certainly in the last few videos, especially in the first videos of this book. But she did get better towards the end of this book. Maybe that was just a renewed focus on Perrin as a character and less about his interpersonal relationships with people and more about what needs to be done. Maybe she'll be different in the next book, but it didn't end up on a sour note with her for me. And well, let's move on to one minor criticism, minor complaint that I have, which is Egwene. And this is a weird criticism, I admit, because I did complain last book that she had little to no agency. And she did have agency this time around. She certainly, plot-wise, she had stuff to do. But on the flip side, I don't think she had any kind of development through this book. She had her humiliation moment with the wise ones when she kind of played with their trust, even though in her mind it wasn't so. And she was being bossy and bratty a bit, but I don't think I saw any kind of significant development for her. But we'll see. This is not a major thing, but I do have to point it out. At the end of the book, I was, So Avienda changed a lot. She went through this incredibly stubborn, maybe even loyal to a fault person, but a very passionate one, to someone who was open to different cultural norms and experiences through Rand. And Rand also grew, I think, a lot. He went from someone that intuits what needs to be done to being a more calculated, more scheming, for the greater good, of course, character. Matt was trying to figure himself out. He was like almost rebuilding himself as a person. He was trying to figure out, who am I? I had these holes in my memory and now they're replaced by all these different people, and that certainly is handy. But what does this mean for me? Who am I now? What do I do? What would Matt do? Am I even Matt anymore? That was also interesting. Other characters as well. This whole Cloak and Dagger situation with Nynaeve and Elaine in Tanchico, that was very gripping. It was somewhat slower paced than the situation in Two Rivers with Perrin, or with Rand in the Aiel Wasteland, but it had to be different because this was just espionage stuff. Of course, it was deliberately paced. We had this threefold narrative here. We had Rand on his unending march to fulfill his destiny, then Perrin trying to do what he thinks is right and saving his people and his hometown, and then we had Nynaeve and Elaine and Thom doing covert ops, and that was really well done. Jordan really juggled all of these three A, B, and C plots quite well. Not everyone can do that, I think. So let's delve into predictions a bit, shall we?
Well, it's only a guess, but it's all I have to go on.
Prediction number 1, the schism in the tower. I think this will be a far bigger issue than Rand's current position. Or I should say the focus, because Rand uniting the clans is a huge deal. But then a lot of these folks left. However, without Simon Sanchez, the former Emerlin, he has now enemies where he thought he had some kind of support. A begrudging support he didn't entirely trust, but he had allies at least. Now the new Emerlin is, I don't think she's a darkspawn, but I do think she is just a zealot. She's no better than a white cloak, just on the other side of the spectrum, and as such I think she will be easily manipulated by a Black Aja sister, or well, we saw at the towards the end with Padon Fane just being all giddy about being able to do some serious damage to the tower. So that can only get worse, I think, at the tower. Prediction number 2. Well, since I was so wrong about Matt last book, about him going away on his own, I do think that he will visit Two Rivers. I don't think Rand will, but I do think Matt will split up, at least for a time. There will be some kind of a branching narrative with him, I think. And prediction number 3, the Aiel stuff. Couladin. So he is still alive, right? He is still a possible potential threat for the future. Will he invade the wetlands and start sowing chaos into the wetlanders' homes? Maybe. Who knows? I am curious about him, and I'm also very curious about the Aiel that abandoned Rand. Do they go to the Couladin side? Do they see his extremism as rebellious in nature, or did he offend them so much, even those who left, with these fake parading as a chief and breaking of their ways and customs? Will there be just schism? Well, there is a schism as well in the Aiel lines. I mean, they are a tribalistic culture, so even more so than before. What does this mean for their blood feuds? What does this mean for the blood feuds if there's no longer this law that holds them together? I'm just, as you can tell, I'm super into Aiel people. And to conclude, I think this is without a doubt the best book in the series so far. No argument from me there. It's the most well-rounded one, and despite its just gargantuan length, I think it dragged very little. And that's an accomplishment in itself, I think. The intrigue, character development, the momentum it built up gradually, it all really came through. I think this is the first book I would rate with 5 stars so far. All others were 4. But this one, yeah, this was great, really. This was really enjoyable. So, thank you guys for watching. The Sunday is nearing, so I will be reviewing my second book for the Space Opera Readathon. So please look forward to that. I'm nearly done with that book as well. Good stuff. See you next time. Bye-bye.